signal. And we're recording now. So I'm Luann Fortune with Saybrook University, and I am very delighted to be here with Kasey McClurg, who's coming in from Colorado Springs, Colorado. And Kasey's going to talk to us today about her work as an integrative practitioner in an area where I at least didn't know that there were a lot of integrative practitioners having to do with sports training. So Kasey, before we even get started, a little bit that I know is that you were called to this work because you perceived a need for a different approach in the field of sports training. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so with this integrative sports training, a lot of traditional programs will just focus on performance in sport. They don't consider the entire athlete. Rarely do these programs traditionally go beyond physical and in some cases maybe nutrition training, but usually it's just about you come in, you're training, you made this many gains or you got this much faster at your running, and they end up objectifying the athlete, and that leads to imbalanced training practices. And what I've noticed, and with the people I've worked with, I've been doing this since 2006, we have high athlete dropout rates due to completely avoidable injury and pain, and ultimately disappointment in their sport. So the main point of this conversation is to help raise awareness that there's another way besides these traditional methods, and that's through integrative sports training. In the integrative sports training, we are going to perceive the entire athlete and actually treat them like a person. And that could be whether they're professional or just recreational athletes, so they can actually enjoy being active without that fear of injury or pain or just being disappointed in it. And by understanding that problem, we can then understand the background that's necessary to be successful as an integrative sports training practitioner.
That's very cool. I'm going to ask you later on about how you found your way to Saybrook, and because you are a Saybrookиan. But first of all, since you've been doing this for a while now, tell me about your credentials, your training, and your background in the field.
There has been quite a journey to get here. Over the last 15 years, I've had sometimes the agony and sometimes the joy of being exposed to many different kinds of approaches to being healthy and physical and active. I started out similar to you, Dr. Fortune, 2006 as a licensed sports massage therapist. And that opened a lot of really great opportunities for me to work. I started working with Houston Rockets right out the gate, so that was really awesome. Back when Yao Ming was a thing. So I started in sports massage and moved into becoming a certified personal trainer. That opened the pathway to understand where maybe physical therapy comes in to correct form and making sure you're lifting weights properly so you're not getting injured. So I became a physical therapy assistant while I was doing my undergraduate, and got to work again with a lot of people on the corrective exercise side of things and the rehabilitation. And that really set the foundation for the work I do now. Over time, I became a certified nutrition coach, and I'm in the PhD Integrative and Functional Nutrition program. So I obviously don't believe that being just a certified nutrition coach is enough. There needs to be a little bit more. That's definitely a gap that exists in the industry. But I did become a certified nutrition coach, so I could offer a little bit more expertise with just macronutrient education. The coolest thing, though, is becoming an emergency medical technician. That really helped bring a lot of things together. I personally work with endurance athletes who tend to push a little bit far on the extremes of athletics. So being an EMT has helped me with high altitude situations, with heat and thermal situations. We can do things out in wilderness settings. It helps with trauma. I mean, cyclists and runners fall down, fall off trails. And so that's been really helpful with tying together a lot of different things with the traditional medicine world and the complementary and alternative medicine world. And it opened up a lot of doors for me because people perceived that as, oh, wow, you really know what you're doing. And I started to be seen as a medical professional. Some other things I picked up along the way, because I do focus on endurance athletes and primarily cyclists. I'm a certified coach for USA Cycling and for USA Triathlon. I am a certified metabolic analyst, which is really cool and helps me to dive into performance metrics with more than just assessments. It helps to actually get true heart rate training zones and that really evidence-based information to inform training specific to the person. Other things that I've done particularly to cycling is become a professional bike fitter. That helps to make sure people are able to enjoy being on a bike without getting extra kind of injuries or overuse injuries. And this is all overlaid with a lot of mind-body connections, so behavior change specialists and things like that. So again, there's a lot of things that have gone into this, but it's really helped to envelop this entire approach to an athlete instead of you just go to a gym and train and that's it.
This is fascinating to me because of the way that you've taken multiple credentials, multiple training, and you have integrated them in a way that's highly interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary. It's not like you went out and you got one piece of training to be an integrated sports trainer. Around all of this, how do you structure your practice? And even how has it evolved over time as your knowledge and your expertise has evolved?
It is always developing, as you can imagine, because there isn't guidance out there for this. If you want to be an integrative sports trainer or practitioner, you do this. It's very much paving a path. Part of what I'm doing as part of my practice is creating an academy where I can have people come in and learn some of the methods I've spent the last 15 years developing. But as far as what faces the client or the athletes, because they love being called athletes, it's really it's always developing, but a lot of times we'll start with the performance assessment or the metabolic assessments. I do have a physical location that I have my performance testing lab. I have all kinds of really cool things there. I'm such a nerd when it comes to data and numbers. So I have a metabolic testing lab. We'll do a lot of information around that. We'll go through charts and graphs. I'm looking to integrate muscle oxygen evaluation, blood glucose monitoring, and possibly some body composition analysis to create a really evidence-based approach that can then inform the rest of our structured training programs. So what it looks like, essentially, somebody will go to my website or they'll talk to me and I'll say, okay, well, what do you want to accomplish? And kind of determine what the baseline for their athleticism is. I had some people yesterday who they want to run a marathon, but they just want to finish it and have fun doing it, which is totally different than the people that I deal with who come in who are professional athletes and be like, I want to win a national championship. So we take that individualized intake, start to add on some of the evidence-based approaches with getting data specific to the individual. And then we'll begin to overlay nutrition coaching, structured periodized programming specific to their sport, specific to maybe their injury history, their training history. Really the intake is where it all happens. And then I'll even do things like dietary supplement consulting. I hate it. It happens so often in the athletic world. People will come in with, hey, here's 15 supplements I'm taking that this guy at GNC told me I need to take. And it's not going to help them improve their performance at all most of the time. Really, it's about their mind. I have a sports psychologist that does coaching and counseling. I have registered dietitians who will do meal planning. So we really try to hit all of the highlights and make sure we're bringing on an interdisciplinary staff So when we have people with more specific issues like an eating disorder, which is really prevalent in endurance sport, they have a resource that is qualified to guide them through that while still keeping them in line with their training and active lifestyle goals.
Well, Kasey, this is clearly a priceless service that you provide to people and treatments and practice and coaching. But candidly, how do people pay for your services? Is this something they can submit to their insurance company? Do you help them with that? And what do you think about reimbursement and access?
It's something that I'm still working through a lot. Definitely keeping that social determinant in mind. Uh, it's a very hard place for me as a business owner because I need to make money and pay my rent, but it is a really expensive service traditionally. So, what I try to do is offer tiered programs. So, somebody really wants me one on one right there with them every step of the way. That's a really elite service, and people know that's going to be expensive, and so they're going to pay that market price. But I've tried to offer more affordable options. For instance, with any kind of training or athletic lifestyle, that and I don't have the data right off the top of my head, but something around 80% of successful training comes down to accountability and coaching. And with that, I can give them a training program that meets most of the standards, but then give them that extra accountability that can help them be successful. And I try to do that around $95 a month versus something that my normal rate is $100 an hour for those other sessions that are really particular. So I try to do that. I try to work people into group settings. Another thing I deal with a lot are people who live in rural settings who maybe can't have access. If they have a meal plan, they don't have the same access to food. Or if they do, it's really expensive. Something like dates is not something that exists in rural America at a small supermarket. So we try to take into account some of that, lay on education. I try to offer a lot of low-cost workshops or free workshops to the community as a way to mitigate some of those costs. As far as insurance, in Colorado, it's still very much the Wild West with things. So we don't have requirements to practice nutrition, unfortunately. That's something I'd like to see changed, and I'm advocating at my local level to change. And because they don't have licensing requirements, it's really difficult to have insurance cover that cost. So what I have to do is coordinate with things like a weight loss center or a surgical center, and then give them coding based on whatever we're trying to address at the time. And then either the patient has to submit for reimbursement, or the doctor's office has to process that insurance payment because they won't give me the time of day. It makes getting labs very difficult and very expensive. So it's an uphill battle. There's a lot of room that we have to grow in that sector.
But also so exciting being a pioneer. And now being a pioneer in a pandemic, how has the pandemic affected you and your practice?
Really, the taking away of the in-person hasn't been horrible. it it does, it's a little bit of a bummer not getting to be there, with the athletes all the time, but I was already doing a lot of online practicing. I have people throughout the United States, Canada, Australia, and the UK. So we were already working virtually. The difficulty has actually been with the mindset side of it for my athletes. I'm an athlete myself, and last year, frankly, it sucked with all of our races being canceled and things getting pushed. I had my big race for last year got pushed a month, then it got pushed 6 more weeks, then it got pushed to April, and then it got canceled. And it's really difficult to continually adapt your training, because a lot of times, especially for endurance athletics, we look out 8 to 12 months and we have an entire year planned around our event schedule. And that's been devastating to a lot of athletes, and overcoming that and getting people excited about whether it's group rides or races, that's been the biggest challenge with the pandemic.
So I'm going to switch directions with one other question, and it's about research. So here you are in a PhD program, you clearly value research yourself. How has it impacted, or how has the growing body of research impacted your practice and your approach?
So yeah, with research, it's one of those things, especially as a PhD student, you can get really bogged down and, oh my gosh, there's so much research. I just want to go online and share something easy with my audience, or, you take the easy way out. So what I've done personally to navigate that is, at the beginning of every semester, right before classes start, I take a really deep dive into my course syllabi. I see what's coming up. I put it on a content calendar, and I know what I'm going to be asked to research over the course of the semester, and I structure my content for my business around that. And that's been really great because it keeps me motivated. It keeps me thinking about what the needs of my clients are. And people end up loving it because they're like, I never knew this about the ketogenic diet, and where things go wrong, where things go right. And it helps me stay highly engaged and enjoy the research a little bit more, and reminds me of my why. Why am I in this program? Besides that, though, I also allot 2 hours a week to additional research specific to whatever my pressing need is. It's usually cycling or some kind of endurance sport activity and nutrition or training. And unfortunately, there's not one organization that's like, here's what you need to do. So I utilize the National Academy of Sports Medicine. They do a lot of evidence-based approach to their research. I'm very fortunate here in Colorado Springs. I have the National Strength and Conditioning Association. I have the U.S. Olympic Committee, and I have networked within all of that. So there's a good opportunity for me to overlay some of the research they're doing with what I perceive we have a gap in. And then I try to take things a step further. The people that work for me, my staff, my coaches, they are required by my company policy to spend at least 20 minutes a day reading up on some kind of research pertinent to our industry. It's paid time that they get, but that development is really important with the researching. Basically, I take this dream catcher approach. What seems like it works really well in one sector, so maybe it's working really great for strength and conditioning, I'll get that and apply it to my practice. Maybe something like the ketogenic diet may work for some, so I'll get the base information, filter it through some of the research filtering processes we're taught through our studies, find out what's good, what maybe isn't good, what works realistically, because there's a huge research practice gap in this, and then try to overlay some of the research with those evidence-based approaches. And then it's easy for me as an athlete to say, well, that's all nice and dandy when it comes to a lab or a clinical research trial, but you try adding on a husband who likes to eat steak every night and we have a little bit more of a complication, or try adding carpooling kids to the mix, or running a business. And now we have the realistic version of what an athlete's life is like. And that's going to be the biggest approach. And implementing evidence is also making sure it applies to the lifestyle of the athlete. Otherwise, they're going to burn out and get hurt, get injured, and then again, just be disappointed in their performance.
Is there anything else you would like to tell us?
With what I'm trying to do, a lot of people think, well, it's maybe not necessary, or it's maybe a little frivolous because we're talking about athletics. And the vision of what an athlete is almost like you're professional football players and people who have money and all. And really, a lot of athletes struggle with being able to have access to food. There's a lot of poverty in athletics, especially our Olympians. And there's a lot of misunderstanding that I, as a layperson, can never be an athlete because I just wasn't born with the right genetics, or I don't have the time to train, or the array of other issues. So with this, I can just imagine a world where people don't cringe at the thought of being active. They're excited to go to the gym. They're not, oh gosh, I gotta go to the gym, complete a workout. Like that's something that's completely not necessary. And by creating more awareness for integrative sports training, we can help people get excited about moving and having an active life, because now they'll have the knowledge and they'll have the tools to actually be active without fear of hurting themselves, without fear of being embarrassed or failing. And regardless of their ability level, they can actually start to feel like an athlete because they would have faith and almost this champion mindset, and they love it when it happens. To see that light bulb go off and somebody accept themselves as an athlete, as an active person, it's the most glorious part of what I do. And that's why integrative sports training is so important to the future of active lifestyles. And I am happy to talk with anybody who wants to dive into a deeper conversation or look at collaborating, as the only way really to move forward in sports training and active lifestyles is to collaborate and is to be integrative in our approach to how we train athletes, how we train people in active lifestyles. So again, they can enjoy being active without injury, without pain, and without disappointment.
Casey, this has been great. Thank you so much for your time today. And I know that folks will likely have questions for you. So when I post this, I'll be sure to include your contact information. And there was also a wonderful article that I saw that was published about you recently. I think it was back in December. And we'll be sure to include that as well. Is anything else you'd like to say about getting in touch with you?
Easiest way is you can email me, or my phone goes off constantly. So email is Kasey@endurancesport.com. So KASEY @endurancesport.center.com. Or just send me a text message or call me. It's I have the coolest phone number ever because it ends in bike. 719-674-BIKE. That's 2453.
Cool.
Yeah, reach out again if you have questions or you want to collaborate or get involved. And hey, I'm hiring coaches too, so you think you got the you got the chops for it, I'm looking for good people to bring on board too.
Casey, thank you so much. And you have a wonderful day. And thanks for spending time with us. And good luck with that PhD too.
Almost there, going to keep trekking.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fortune.